I still remember the moment like it just happened. Because shame has a way of staying fresh in your heart. I was standing in my food truck wiping the counter when I heard loud laughing behind me. Before I could turn around, cold ketchup hit my chest and spread across my clean white apron. I froze, my hands shaking, my breath stuck in my throat. 3 men in expensive suits were laughing like it was the funniest thing in the world. They did not even look back when they walked away. Customers looked down at their phones or stared at the menu like nothing happened. I wanted to disappear right there. The ketchup kept dripping down, slow and heavy, and each drop felt like another second of pain. I went to the back of the truck and tried to clean myself, but the red stain would not go away. My face was burning, and I kept asking myself why people could be so cruel for no reason. I finished my shift quietly and went home, holding everything inside until I saw my husband. When I told Julian what happened, my voice was still shaking. I thought he would get angry, but he did not raise his voice at all. He just listened, quiet and still, like he was holding back a storm. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, almost soft, and that scared me more than if he had shouted. He told me he was sorry I went through that and that everything would be okay. Then he kissed my forehead and told me to rest. Most people see my husband as a simple man. He wears glasses, works with numbers, and never shows off. Even I did not fully understand the world he came from until after we got married. Julian Cordova is not just an accountant. He is the son of a powerful family that runs businesses most people never hear about, along with very clean, legal companies everyone does. He spent years building honest businesses, earning respect the right way, but he never forgot the rules his father taught him. Loyalty matters. Respect matters. And when someone crosses the line, there are consequences. We had only been married 6 months, and I still felt shy around him sometimes, like I was lucky he chose me. We met 2 years earlier when he came to my food truck for lunch. I liked how kind he was, how he asked about my day, how he treated me like I mattered. He did not tell me about his family at first. When he finally did, I was more worried about his safety than about the power he had. That was when he told me he loved me, and I knew I loved him too. The men who humiliated me were executives from Maxwell Enterprises. I did not know their names that day, but Julian already knew who they were. Richard Thornton, Wesley Parker, and Jonathan Grant were celebrating a big business deal when they decided to use me as their joke. What they did not know was that Julian had already been watching their company for weeks because of another project they were involved in. My pain just gave him a personal reason to act. The next morning, Julian sat at the table with his laptop open while I made coffee. He looked calm, focused, like he was working on any normal business task. But when I glanced at the screen, I did not see budgets or sales charts. I saw names, numbers, and notes that looked serious and heavy. He noticed me looking and closed the laptop gently. He told me he loved me, and that in 7 days, those men would understand what it means to hurt someone and walk away like it means nothing. His smile was soft, the same smile he gives me every morning, but his eyes were cold in a way I had never seen before. Then he kissed me goodbye and went to work. By noon that day, things had already started to change for them. A big loan for one of their projects suddenly fell apart because of new rules and checks. Richard told his team it was nothing serious and that he would fix it with one phone call. But that phone call did not fix anything. What they did not know was that Julian had spent years building strong ties with banks and investors, earning trust slowly and carefully. Those ties were now moving, quietly, all in the same direction. That evening, all 3 men got the same message from unknown numbers. It was a photo of me standing in my food truck, ketchup on my apron, and their laughing faces in the background. No words, no threats, just proof. Wesley laughed it off and said someone was trying to scare them for no reason. He did not understand that fear works best when it grows slowly. On the second day, small problems started piling up. Their credit card stopped working. Wesley could not pay for dinner with an important client and had to leave the restaurant embarrassed. Jonathan found out his club membership was suddenly under review because of money questions. Richard's car was taken by a repo truck right in front of his daughter's school event, with other parents watching. These were not huge disasters, but they were sharp hits to their pride. Julian watched everything from his office without showing emotion. He made short phone calls, gave simple instructions, and trusted the people who worked with him. He also made sure I was safe. Two men I did not recognize were always nearby when I was at my food truck, pretending to be customers or passers-by. Julian never takes chances when it comes to me. I went back to work, holding my head high even though I still felt hurt inside. I did not tell anyone what Julian was doing. I just focused on serving food and smiling at customers, trying to remind myself that I loved what I built with my own hands. That night, Julian cooked dinner for me. He always does when he knows I had a hard day. I told him about a new idea I had, maybe opening a second truck or even a small restaurant one day. His eyes lit up when I talked about it, and he told me he believed in me. I did not know then that he was already planning how to help my dream grow while tearing down the men who tried to make me feel small. By midnight, rumors started spreading in business circles about Maxwell Enterprises facing serious checks from the government. Investors started getting nervous. Wesley kept checking the stock price before bed and saw it drop for no clear reason. He could feel something bad was coming, but he did not know from where. On the third day, things got worse. Richard lost a big speaking event that was important for his image. Wesley found that several clients canceled meetings without giving reasons. Jonathan's wife called him in panic because their vacation home was being checked for old tax problems. The three men finally met and admitted that this could not be random. Wesley was the first to say it out loud. He remembered the food truck, the ketchup, and the photo. The others looked at him like he was crazy at first, then slowly realized he might be right. They still did not know who my husband was, only that the woman they laughed at might be connected to someone powerful. While they were falling apart, my food truck was getting busier. Lines started forming before I even opened. People told me they saw my truck on food blogs and social media. I was shocked and happy, not knowing that Julian had arranged for famous food writers to come and tell my story. They wrote about a small business owner who stayed strong even after being treated badly by rich men. They did not name anyone, but the message was clear. By the afternoon, the executives hired private security to look into me. They found nothing unusual, just a normal business owner with clean records. My husband's name did not appear anywhere near me in their search. Julian had made sure of that. When Richard tried to call his friends at the bank, they suddenly acted distant and careful. Wesley could not even get a meeting with their biggest investor. Jonathan's lawyer called to say inspectors were looking at one of their building sites, which could stop everything. Their company, which looked strong just days before, now felt like it was cracking from every side. Julian met with an old advisor that evening, a man who had known his family for many years. The man told him the executives were scared but still did not understand who was behind it. Julian said they would soon. Tomorrow, he told him, was the next step. That night, I slept in Julian's arms, feeling safe, not knowing how close we were to a moment that would change everything. Three men were lying awake in their big houses, trying to think of enemies who could hurt them like this. They never once thought about the shy woman in the food truck and the quiet man who loved her more than anything. And that was their biggest mistake. The fourth day started with heavy rain, the kind that makes the city feel smaller and darker. I woke up early and watched the drops slide down the window while Julian got dressed in silence. There was something different about him that morning. He was calm, but not gentle. Focused, like every step he took had already been planned weeks ago. At Maxwell Enterprises, the mood was breaking fast. The boardroom that once felt powerful now felt tense and cold. Richard sat at the head of the table, but his confidence was gone. His suit looked the same, but he looked tired, older. Wesley tried to explain the numbers on the screen, but his voice shook when his assistant whispered urgent news into his ear. Their main lender had started a full review of all loans. Jonathan tried to speak about future plans, but no one was listening anymore. Trust inside the company was disappearing. Board members who once nodded quietly were now asking hard questions. They wanted answers. Richard did not have any. While their world was shaking, mine was changing in a different way. When I opened my food truck that morning, there was already a line. People smiled at me. Some said they saw my story online. Others said they came because they wanted to support small businesses. I felt proud and confused at the same time. I did not know how this wave of support started, but it warmed my heart. Julian watched everything from his office downtown. His building was tall and bright, filled with people who respected him for his clean success. Few of them knew anything about the deeper power he carried. His assistant knew better than to interrupt him when he made short calls and wrote notes by hand. Each call moved another piece on the board. By afternoon, the executives finally accepted that they were under attack. They met again in Richard's office with the door locked. Wesley brought up the photo message. Jonathan admitted that too many things were happening at once to be chance. Richard loosened his tie and said the words none of them wanted to say. Someone is doing this on purpose. Their thoughts returned to me. The food truck. The ketchup. The joke that no longer felt funny. Wesley sent his security team to dig deeper, to find anything, any connection. They found nothing new. I was just a woman running a food truck. My husband was a ghost. Julian found out about their investigation almost immediately. One of the security men worked for him too, loyal to the Cordova name. Information flowed one way only, and Julian smiled slightly when he heard. It was time to let fear grow. That evening, Julian made a call to his banker and said just 5 words. Start the margin calls now. By nightfall, all 3 men got alerts that personal loans tied to their company stock were being called back. The stock price was falling, and their safety net was disappearing. The math was cruel and perfect. The 5th day began with breaking news. Maxwell Enterprises stock dropped sharply before the market even opened. Reporters started asking questions. Analysts whispered about hidden problems. Investors panicked. Phones rang nonstop. Richard arrived at his office and found an envelope on his desk. Inside were photos he thought no one would ever see. Proof of an affair, clear and undeniable. A small note sat on top with one word. Tomorrow. Below it was a restaurant name and a time. Wesley and Jonathan received the same kind of envelope. Each held secrets they buried deep. Wesley's altered tax records. Jonathan's pressure on a city official years ago. Each envelope carried the same message. Dinner. Tomorrow night. They met again, shaken and pale. This is blackmail, Richard said, his voice dry. Jonathan shook his head. No demands. No money asked. Just a meeting. This is personal. Julian spent that day preparing carefully. He chose the restaurant, a quiet place known for privacy and power. He reserved a private room. Everything had meaning. He wanted them calm enough to listen and scared enough to understand. When he came home, I noticed the tension in his shoulders. I asked him if everything was okay. He looked at me, and his face softened. He touched my cheek and told me that after tonight, things would change. He asked me to have dinner with him later. I said yes without knowing why my heart started racing. That afternoon, the stock fell even more. News channels talked about Maxwell Enterprises like a sinking ship. Lawyers, public relations teams, and advisors ran in circles, trying to control a story they did not understand. As evening came, the 3 executives arrived at the restaurant one by one. They looked nothing like the men who laughed behind my truck days ago. They were smaller now, quiet, nervous. Julian was already there, sitting calmly when they entered. At first, they did not recognize him. He looked like a normal businessman. Then he spoke, and something in his voice made them sit without being asked. He greeted them politely and thanked them for coming. Wesley's eyes narrowed first. He stared at Julian and then said it slowly. You are connected to the food truck woman. Julian nodded once. Amelia is my wife. The room went silent. I walked in just then, wearing a simple dress, my hair neat, my head held high. Their eyes met mine, and I saw shame flash across their faces. I sat beside Julian without speaking. Richard tried to regain control and asked what Julian wanted. He offered money, deals, anything. Julian smiled, but it was cold. If I wanted money, he said, your company would already belong to me. He explained who he was without raising his voice. He spoke of his family, of relationships built over generations, of power that did not need to shout. Richard's face drained of color when he realized the truth. You are Antonio Cordova's son. Julian confirmed it with a nod. He told them exactly why they were there, not for business, not for money, for respect. He reminded them how they laughed at someone they thought was nothing, how they walked away without care. I finally spoke. My voice was quiet, but the room listened. I told them it was not just about me. It was about every person they treated like they did not matter. Julian laid out his terms. They would create a foundation to support small businesses. They would fund it with their own money. They would volunteer monthly in poor communities. This would last years. Every step would be watched. In return, he would stop the destruction, slowly, naturally. Their secrets would stay hidden. No one argued. They knew the alternative. The next morning, they signed everything. The news changed tone over the next week. The company stopped falling. The foundation was announced. People praised the executives for their sudden kindness, never knowing the truth behind it. My food truck stayed busy. Then busier. A local news station interviewed me. I smiled and spoke about hard work and kindness. Richard served food at a community center that weekend. Someone filmed it. The video went viral. People laughed at first, then listened. Something unexpected happened. The punishment began to change them. Wesley started taking the work seriously. Jonathan helped people for real. Richard struggled the most, but even he began to see things differently. A month later, we met again, this time at my new restaurant. The men sat across from us, quieter, humbler. They spoke about the foundation with real pride. Julian asked them if they understood now, or if they were just following orders. Wesley admitted the truth. Helping people felt better than any deal he ever closed. Jonathan agreed. Richard spoke last. He said he finally understood that fear was not real power. Julian listened, then said the foundation no longer had to be punishment. It could become a choice. When they left, we watched through the window as Richard helped an old woman with her bags. No cameras, no pressure. I looked at Julian and squeezed his hand. He looked back at me, the storm finally gone from his eyes. But the story was not over yet. Life did not return to normal after that night. It changed into something deeper, something quieter, and more real. I could feel it in the way Julian moved through our home, lighter but still watchful, like a man who had finished a necessary battle and was now watching the aftermath. The foundation began working faster than anyone expected. Applications poured in from people who had never believed a company like Maxwell would even notice them. Small shop owners, food vendors, mechanics, tailors, and family businesses filled the meeting rooms with stories that carried years of struggle. I attended a few meetings quietly, sitting beside Julian, listening more than speaking. The three executives were there too. They wore simpler suits now, no loud jokes, no careless smiles. They listened, really listened. Wesley surprised me the most. One afternoon, he stayed late to help a father and son who ran a small landscaping business. He asked questions, took notes, and even visited their site himself. When the loan was approved and the business expanded, creating jobs, I saw something change in his eyes. Pride mixed with humility. Jonathan used his legal knowledge in ways he never had before. He helped people understand permits, zoning laws, and contracts that once blocked them. I overheard him say once that the system was not built for fairness, and for the first time he sounded ashamed of how well he once used it. Richard struggled. He hated being seen serving food, cleaning floors, or standing quietly while people spoke over him. But he never quit. Week after week he showed up. Slowly the anger in him faded, replaced by something closer to reflection. My restaurant opened 3 months later. It was small, warm, and full of life. The walls held photos of my food truck days, reminders of where everything began. On opening night, The place was packed. Julian stood beside me, proud but quiet. He never needed attention. The media loved the story. A woman who went from food truck to restaurant. A foundation helping real people. Corporate leaders learning humility. They never saw the strings that once moved it all, and Julian preferred it that way. One afternoon, Richard came to the restaurant alone. No assistants. No cameras. He asked if he could sit. We talked like normal people. He told me about his daughter, about how she asked him why he volunteered now. He said he did not have a perfect answer, only that he wanted to be better than the man she saw before. That night, Julian told me he was proud of me. Not because of success, but because I never lost kindness. Even when I had every reason to become bitter, the foundation grew beyond the original plan. More funding, more neighborhoods, more lives touched. This time, it was their idea. No threats, no fear. At the quarterly review, the executives asked Julian for guidance, not out of fear, but respect. He listened and reminded them that change only mattered if it lasted when no one was watching. As weeks turned into months, the city changed in small ways. New shops opened. Jobs appeared. Hope spread quietly. One evening, after closing the restaurant, Julian and I walked home hand in hand. I asked him if he ever regretted the path he chose, the power he carried. He smiled and told me power means nothing if it cannot protect what you love. I leaned into him, knowing the shy woman in the food truck was gone. Not because I became powerful, but because I was never powerless to begin with. And there was still one final chapter waiting to be written. The final chapter did not arrive with noise or drama. It came quietly, the way real change always does. A year passed after the night at the restaurant. The foundation had become something real, not just a headline. Small businesses that once struggled to survive were now hiring, expanding, and standing on their own. I saw it with my own eyes when people came into my restaurant and told me how a small loan or one honest chance changed everything for them. The three executives were no longer the same men who laughed behind my food truck. Wesley stopped chasing attention completely. He spent his weekends visiting businesses the foundation supported, sometimes alone, sometimes bringing his teenage son. One day his son shook my hand and thanked me. He said his father talked differently now, kinder, more aware. I saw Wesley look away, embarrassed but proud. Jonathan became known in the community for helping people who could not afford legal advice. He never advertised it, he just showed up. I once overheard him tell a young shop owner that rules should protect people, not trap them. The words sounded sincere, like they came from a place of understanding, not guilt. Richard changed the slowest, but the deepest. He started mentoring students from poor neighborhoods, meeting them weekly, listening more than speaking. One night, he told Julian that fear once made him feel powerful, but respect felt heavier and more meaningful. Julian only nodded. He never needed apologies. He watched actions. Maxwell Enterprises rebuilt its image, but not the old one. Projects were redesigned to protect communities. Deals were reviewed with different eyes. People inside the company noticed the change and followed it. The culture shifted, not because it was forced, but because leadership finally understood responsibility. My restaurant expanded too. A second location opened across town. I hired young people who reminded me of myself. Quiet, hardworking, overlooked. I made sure they were seen, heard, and respected. Every paycheck I signed felt like proof that dignity creates success, not cruelty. One evening, the city hosted a business awards ceremony. A new category honored community impact. They asked me and Richard to present together. Standing on that stage, I thought about ketchup dripping down my apron and how small I felt that day. Now I stood tall, not because I defeated anyone, but because I never let that moment define me. Richard spoke honestly in his speech. He said mistakes reveal who you are, but what you do after reveals who you become. The audience applauded, not knowing how true those words were. Later that night, Julian and I returned home, tired but peaceful. We sat on the couch in silence, comfortable and warm. I rested my head on his shoulder and thanked him, not for revenge, but for standing beside me without ever taking my voice away. He told me he never did it for punishment. He did it for balance. A few weeks later, Julian stepped back from direct involvement with the foundation. The executives could carry it on their own now. He trusted them. That trust was the final test. On a quiet Sunday morning, we walked past my old food truck location. Another vendor stood there now, nervous and hopeful. I smiled at her and ordered lunch. I tipped well and wished her luck. Julian squeezed my hand. Life moved forward. The men who once laughed learned a lesson they could never forget, not because they were crushed, but because they were changed. And me, I was never just a shy food truck attendant. I was a woman who kept her dignity, married a man who understood loyalty, and watched kindness turn power into something meaningful. That was the real victory.